Conspiracy theories are everywhere these days. My favorite comes from a bald kid that doesn't think silverware exists.
Do not try and bend the spoon. That's impossible. Instead, only try to realize the truth.
What truth?
There is no spoon.
I eat with this thing every day. Checkmate, kid. King me.
Now, it's probably clickbait to say Jesus was the very first conspiracy theorist. I'm sure there were a few Trojans who had him beat.
This is a gift. We should take it to the temple of Poseidon.
I think we should burn it.
Burn it, my friends. It's a gift to the gods.
Father, burn it.
I'm with Paris. This isn't immigration, it's invasion. Oh, here we go again. Have you even read the books I've read?
It's also important to point out that the term conspiracy theorist is itself a conspiracy. It was coined in the 60s by a certain three-letter agency to quell growing skepticism about the official JFK narrative. It's also important to understand that conspiracy isn't a theory. It's a felony, which is why the phrase was invented. More often than not, those that throw it around do so to keep from ending up in jail. So how was Jesus a conspiracy theorist? To understand this, we first have to go back 500 years to when the Hebrews were taken captive in Babylon. Believe it or not, before this event, no one was concerned about Moses or the law. In fact, after the book of Judges, Moses isn't even mentioned until they returned from captivity. The nation was judged based on the king, not the people. If he lived a moral life, then they were blessed. If not, they were cursed. But Babylon changed all that. Moses and the law suddenly took center stage as sin became the perfect scapegoat for the government's inability to protect itself, and a new ruling class called the Pharisees was formed to help keep people in check. Since the rebuilt temple was their only connection to God, it became the focal point of their society, and adult men were required to travel to Jerusalem 3 times a year to participate. But even that wasn't enough. Once a year, the high priest would go beyond the veil into the Holy of Holies and make a sacrifice for the sins of the entire nation. The ritual included 2 goats. One was released into the wild, the other was killed, and its blood was sprinkled on the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant. Eventually, an entire economic system stemmed from this sacrifice. They even printed their own coins called the half shekel of the sanctuary, something that not only upset Jesus, but Rome as well. The temple veil was the only thing separating God from man, and only the high priest could venture beyond the curtain and experience the open heaven on the other side.
What are those doors over there?
Behind these doors is the Holy of Holies, earthly domain of the gods, a place so ineffably sacred, so powerful, that to enter is instant death.
Who cleans it?
And it was this division that wasn't just the source of one conspiracy, but 2.
Jesus' entire ministry was against this temple.
You see, the Bible tells us that the priesthood had been corrupted, and that not only did it need to change, but the law as well. We find out later that the sacrifice never had the power to take away sin, and that God didn't dwell in a temple made of human hands. This is why Jesus, like all heroes, took on the rebel archetype and continually clashed with the temple system, calling it a synagogue of Satan, and the Pharisees a brood of vipers. He went so far as to say that the temple would be destroyed and left destitute. And the only time he ever lost his cool was in the temple.
So what was his problem? I mean, didn't the temple system come from God? Isn't that how they found forgiveness of sins?
We're told that when Jesus died, the veil split, exposing the truth. There was no Ark of the Covenant inside. There could be no forgiveness of sin because the high priest couldn't sprinkle blood on the mercy seat. Rabbinical records show that once the people saw the truth, sacrifice stopped.
It was Jesus that ended the sacrifice in the temple, not some future antichrist. And he did it at the exact time the prophecy in Daniel said he would.
The system of control was broken, and the results proved catastrophic. Multiple would-be messiahs came forward in the years that followed, and eventually civil war broke out, culminating with the zealots taking over the temple. Rome was called in, which ended with the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. The second temple conspiracy centered around Stephen, the first martyr. You see, the temple was not only built to resemble the human body, but also all nature. It was known as heaven and earth, and this is what Jesus referred to when he said that the law wouldn't disappear until heaven and earth passed away. Which is exactly what happened. The idea of an open heaven is found throughout the Bible, but once the temple was built, the experience was localized to the Holy of Holies. Remember, the Holy of Holies represents the head, the only place we can find God. The entire purpose of the temple system was to control who had an open heaven experience. This is why Stephen was stoned. Only priests were allowed inside the sanctuary, and only the high priest was worthy of an open heaven experience in the Holy of Holies. Why? Because it's impossible to control people that can think for themselves. It's impossible to subjugate citizens that can directly connect with truth. For the Latin Church, salvation meant becoming a Christian. For the Greek and Celtic churches, salvation meant becoming a Christ. And it's this view that's found in every story ever told. The Greek church made Jesus the ideal. The Latin one made him an idol. You see, religion wants us to avoid the verses that say we'll do greater works than Jesus, that we are the light of the world, and that the earth is just waiting for us to realize it. Paul said we're already seated in heavenly places, and in Revelation, Jesus himself said we sit on his throne. But this truth is only available to those willing to cross the veil. The temple veil separated matter from spirit, and is something every hero must cross on their journey to wholeness. Glimpsing the other side could result in death, which is why the Hebrews would tie a rope around the high priest's waist. This is reminiscent of the goddess Inanna's Dance of the Seven Veils as she descended into the underworld to find her lover. We can look at this as moving from the conscious mind to the subconscious, and in story, this is the hero leaving the ordinary world and entering the new or special world. These worlds represent the two hemispheres of the brain, and the veil represents the corpus callosum. Every hero must cross this veil if they ever hope to find wholeness. This movement from the logical left brain to the intuitive right is the hero's journey, from enthusiasm to apotheosis and finally, epiphany. But it always comes with a price. There is no crown without a cross. There is no majesty without martyrdom.
Neo-learning that there is no spoon is no different from the Hebrews learning that God didn't dwell in a temple made of human hands.
All heroes discover that everything they know is wrong. There are no exceptions to this. The death in every story is just the death of the hero's previously held beliefs, and they must be given up freely. All heroes are martyrs. Unfortunately, the conspiracy of experts and external salvation is still going strong today. And if the last few years have shown us anything, it's that we still have a long way to go. The stones that took down Stephen continually search for anyone foolish enough to think for themselves. This is why there are so few heroes.
Nothing will ever change until we can acknowledge the truth that every hero becomes a Christ. But for those stuck in the ordinary world, it still sounds like blasphemy. There's only one story. There's only one person in that story, and that person is you.